When a seemingly nice and wholesome doctor decided to use his own love butter to inseminate many of his patients over the years, his biological children started popping up all over the place. He didn't consider that this might hurt his squeaky clean reputation when it all leaked out. It's not every day that someone out there has roughly 100 children. I mean, maybe if you're talking about Genghis Khan, but you never really hear about it in the modern era. Well, we've got one of those tales right here, and it's anything but conventional. Here we have the story of a strange man named Donald Lee Cline. When Donald was young, he attended Indiana University to get his undergraduate degree and then went on to Indiana University School of Medicine to get his MD. While doing his internship at the Indiana University Health Methodist Hospital, he decided that he would join the Air Force. He did, serving for 2 years and then coming back to the United States to remain in the reserves. This was where Donald's life took a turn from the clean-cut and hopeful to the tragic and bizarre. In August of 1963, Donald was driving down the streets of his hometown when he was caught off guard by an unfortunate sight: a 4-year-old girl running out into the street in front of him. The young girl, Angela Golden, was chasing after her mother, who was across the street. Her family was still sitting and talking on the porch when they saw everything. Donald crashed into her with his car, killing her on the spot. Donald was hit with a wave of guilt, left extremely distraught with what had happened. Although it seems he wasn't charged with a crime, he still felt that it was his fault. He turned to religion more and more after this point. He decided it was time to change his life and devote himself to God. It's said that Donald came to join what is called the Quiverful movement, a fundamentalist sect of ultra-conservative Christians who denounce contraception and sterilization, but celebrate reproducing in great amounts, taking the "be fruitful and multiply" verse from the Bible very seriously. Donald married his wife, Susie Audrey Cline, and had several children with her himself. But, he wondered, would this be enough? Donald decided it was time to put his medical knowledge to good use. In 1979, he opened up what would be his clinic for decades on 2020 West 86th Street in Indianapolis. His clinic specialized in, as you may have guessed, reproductive endocrinology and infertility. At the time, infertility was somewhat of a new area to specialize in. Donny Boy was on his way to facilitate some pregnancies. As many people in the area found this to be a very noble endeavor, Donald's reputation within the community only got better and better. After all, he was a prestigious doctor, an elder in his church, and had the type of personality that people would describe as empathetic and compassionate. Donald's religion bled over into his professional life as his office was covered in Bible verses with, "If you want to get to heaven, you need to be Christian," written across his wall. Not only did this affect his office, but his home as well. He had a pretty nice and swanky swimming pool that he would use to perform baptisms right there at his house. Running his practice, raking in the cash, and traveling all over the world to speak at conferences about fertility treatments, Donald continued to operate his fertility clinic for the next 30 years before it was time to retire and take it easy. In 2009, he hung up his lab coat for good and decided to burn out the remainder of his lifespan in leisure. Things were all going as planned until a few years later in 2014. This was when Donald's cushy life would all come crashing down around him due to a deep, dark secret that he was hiding from everyone he knew. This was all due to the discovery of one woman, his own biological daughter. In 2014, a woman, a complete stranger to Donald, was living her life. Her mother had been a former patient of Donald's back in the day when she struggled with fertility issues. After attending Dr. Cline's clinic, the woman was told that she would be receiving sperm from a healthy young doctor in training and that his sperm would be used to inseminate only 3 women maximum. After getting the goop, she was finally able to conceive. This is how Jacoba Ballard was born into the world. Jacoba had lived her life as an only child out on a farm in Indiana, or so she thought. She was the miracle baby her parents were overjoyed to have. Growing into adulthood and curious to learn about her genetic history, she went ahead and bought a test kit from 23andMe and decided to give it a shot. She was shocked to learn a lot more than she had bargained for. She came upon a crazy discovery. Not only was her father not her biological father, but she had at least 8 siblings scattered about. This was, without a doubt, unexpected. Jacoba decided to contact the local news, Fox 59 to be specific, to tell her story and hopefully find her siblings. Speaking with Fox 59's Angela Ganote, she said, "I need to know if I have more siblings. I want to have a relationship with them. I would love to know who my biological father is." The news station then tested the DNA results through Strand Diagnostics, proving that her 23andMe results were no mistake. Angela Ganote went out and interviewed 3 of the 8 other siblings. They all had a similar backstory. Each of their parents had attended Donald's clinic for fertility treatments, insemination. They were all told the same thing: sperm from a healthy young doctor, use 3-time maximum, all that good stuff. According to an assisted reproduction attorney named Michelle Jackson, this is how things tended to go down back in those days. Everything was new and nothing was really set in stone. At the time, you weren't told where your love butter was coming from. She says, everything was anonymous. You got very little information about your donor and you just trusted your professional doctor. However, these 3 biological sisters felt that they deserved to know who their father was. After all, it was pretty clear that this whole 3 times maximum thing was a flat-out lie. Those little love guppies were swimming all over town and they wanted to know why. One of their mothers even said that she felt the whole process was pretty suspicious. Back when she went, her treatment mainly consisted of going into the office 2 to 3 times a week to get inseminated for 5 months straight. Eventually, after all those months, she did get pregnant and she considered it a win. But something never quite set right with her. They came to contact Dr. Donald Cline, who wrote them an email back saying that they were out of luck. Donald's email notably came from an email address associated with the Quiverful Movement domain name. Going to that website, they were hit with Bible passages such as Jeremiah 1:5. "Before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you." Donald wrote, "I can tell you that your mother's records have been shredded. Also, back then, we did not keep a record of the donor's identity." Still though, the women wanted to know their father's medical history. They wanted to know who their other siblings were and how many more they had. They weren't satisfied being told that their search was at a premature end. This is where Angela came back to the rescue. Using her resources at Fox, she was able to do some deeper digging. This was how they found out that the father of all of these siblings was none other than Donald Cline himself. While working at his own clinic, Donald had been using his own sperm. He would simply walk into the other room, crank one out, get it ready, walk back into the room, and drop it in, day after day for years. After coming to this discovery, Jacoba and the other siblings contacted 2 of Donald's kids, Doug and Donna, to arrange for a meeting with their biological father. They came out to Donald's home, seeing him hobbling into the room with his cane. Donald showed very little emotion throughout the meeting, keeping it cool in front of the kids he had with his wife. More concerningly, he was strapped. The siblings wondered if the gun was there as some sort of ploy to intimidate them into silence. Donald introduced himself and asked all of the siblings their name, age, and job, almost if he was judging how they all turned out. He was checking the pedigree of his children. Well, much to his dismay, a number of kids suffer from autoimmune disorders. So they asked Donald for his medical history. He told them that he wouldn't be handing it over, but assured them that there was nothing to worry about. Instead, he reached out and handed Jacoba a piece of paper with that same quote from Jeremiah 1:5. She declined this gift. They asked why he would do something as bizarre and creepy as using his own sperm to inseminate his clients. Donald said that all he was doing was helping desperate mothers and their families. He assured them that they only had 15 siblings total, no more than that, so don't do any more digging. Well, they dug more, and thanks to their connections with the news station, they were able to find out that they had a lot more than 15 siblings. It appeared that Donald had fathered at least 94 children over the years. It goes without saying that the media had a heyday with this one. It was one of the weirdest stories people had ever heard. As the journalist dug into his personal life and history, Donald started to see the writing on the wall. He was probably going to lose his marriage and his standing within the church for sure. So he decided to go down the route of harassing his offspring over the phone. He was even suspected of vandalizing their property, although it was never conclusively linked back to him. For example, Jacoba came out of her home one morning to find all of the lug nuts from the tires on her car missing. Another's email was hacked and had their conversations leaked. Even more sinister, another sibling got a phone call from a local cemetery asking to follow up on the grave they wanted to get for themselves. Donald's church, the Zionsville Fellowship, said that they had no knowledge of what he had been doing for all of these years. To them, Donald admitted that he may have been a bit unethical in his practice. However, they felt he showed sufficient remorse and didn't hold it against him. However, as more and more came out, they lost more and more sympathy for him. After a while, Donald gave up and decided to go join a different church. The siblings came to hit a roadblock when it came to charging Donald with any sort of crime. There was no law in existence that prohibited what he did. It was kind of uncharted territory. However, there was one thing they could hit Donnie with: being a liar. When speaking to the investigators, he told them, "I can empathetically say that at no time did I ever use my own sample for insemination, nor was I a donor." This was where Donald was caught. He had left a voicemail on Jacoba's phone admitting to what he did, saying, "This is Dr. Cline. You know, I thought I was doing the right thing. I only donated my own sample 9 or 10 times. My wife and I, after 57 years of marriage, we've had a great deal of problems over this. She considers this adultery. I donated my sample. Gonna lose my wife. Our marriage will be over. Can you help?" After this, the Attorney General conducted their own DNA test. It showed that there was a 99.999% chance that Donald was their father. He had indeed lied. So he was forced to plead guilty to 2 felony counts of obstruction of justice. One for lying to the police and one for threatening to sue Jacoba in the past. He was facing a full 365 days in prison. None of his previous patients that have been contacted over the years have ever said that they consented to Donald being the sperm donor. In fact, they all felt very violated. It was pointed out in court that every time they came in for a treatment, Donald must have just gone into the other room to spank the monkey, likely just around the corner while they waited. They pointed out the uncomfortable reality that he must have been pretty aroused before and maybe after. One of the biological kids, Jason Hyatt, questioned Donald's motives, saying, "Is it to further his career? Is this some sort of sexual thing? I don't know. I feel like he's hiding something more sinister." During his sentencing, several church elders came out to make positive character statements about Donald, but it was all in vain. When the sentencing finally came about in 2016, Donald barely escaped prison, being hit with a year of probation and nothing more than a $500 fine. He did lose his medical license though, but he had already stopped practicing years ago, so it didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Seeing him escape with virtually no consequences, Elizabeth White, a previous client, and her son Matthew White decided to demand a jury trial with the state of Indiana Department of Insurance. Their complaint consisted of negligence, constructive fraud, battery, breach of contract, breach of express warranty, and negligent hiring or retention as to defendant and reproductive endocrinology associates. Donald motioned to dismiss it, but this was denied. In the end, the court ruled in the kid's favor, saying, "Matthew sufficiently stated breach of contract and tort claims for which relief can be granted." Although the exact amount isn't known, it's widely believed that Indianapolis Infertility and Donald Cline likely settled for about $100,000 in each case, which was the maximum for a healthcare provider. The Patient's Compensation Fund then paid an additional $350,000 in damages in each of the cases as well. While there wasn't a law against what the doctor had done before, laws have since been put into place to prevent this very sort of thing from happening again. In May of 2019, Indiana became the very first state to classify fertility fraud as a felony. Since then, 17 other states have either enacted the same legislation or proposed it. However, since the law didn't exist until after Donald had already done what he did, he's unable to be charged with the crime. By May of 2022, Donald Cline had paid out, in total, $1.35 million to settle all of these cases with his previous patients and his biological children. As of the making of this video, 3 more cases are actually still pending. While Donald never did give an actual motive for his actions, aside from the wanting to help line, it's theorized that the Quiverful movement had a lot to do with it. This theory mainly stemmed from a Netflix documentary based on the case called Our Father. The film was released in May of 2022 and shed a whole lot of light on the case that people didn't know about before. Not only that, it helped to bring more information to light after its release. A man named Josh Nelblett hopped on Netflix and watched the movie one night, feeling a weird sense of connection as soon as he saw the opening scenes. In one of the first shots, Jacoba can be seen taking some autoimmune disorder medication. Josh realized that he took that very same medication for the same rare disorder. He went out and bought his own 23andMe kit, and lo and behold, he came to the same realization that Jacoba had come to all those years ago. The woman he saw on screen was none other than his half-sister. Josh's parents, Pamela and Jerry, had been having problems getting pregnant when they went to see Dr. Cline back in the day. This time, Donald suggested using some of Jerry's sperm to inseminate her in the clinic as it wasn't seeming to take. Well, he didn't. You know what he did. He pounded out some of his own sex sludge in the other room and used it instead. This method was used to conceive both Josh and his younger brother over the next few years. Donald used a creepy line the second time around, telling Pamela, "It will be much easier the second time because we got the recipe." Speaking of the discovery and his decision to tell the media, Josh said, "I am glad I did reach out for help. It saved me. I was in a bad place. I wanted to keep it quiet at first. He destroyed a lot of people's lives." Not only was his father not his biological father, but he now suffered from the autoimmune disorder that he shouldn't have even had. He said, however, that he wouldn't let this revelation destroy him or his family. The Netflix documentary may have done some good, but it didn't come without its own controversies. Netflix had carelessly released the names of a few of Donald's children who had wished to remain anonymous without their consent. Actually, they didn't even ask for their consent. These siblings have now gone on to sue Netflix to have their names removed from the documentary and get some compensation. The documentary also received some flack for its portrayal of Angela Golden, the young girl that Donald had struck and killed with his car back in the day. In the film, they show Angela to be a white girl on a tricycle alone, not a young black girl on foot chasing her mother. Angela Gnode of Fox 59 was actually the one to break this story. Netflix apologized, saying they couldn't find a living member of Angela's family to interview at the time. So, what's good old Donald Cline up to now? Well, he's in his mid-80s, but he's still alive and kicking. He's still a member of the church and the Quiverful movement in general. He still lives in Indianapolis. At first, he kept a low profile, but it turns out that he had a lot of support within the community. Not only does he feel no remorse for what he did, but a lot of his bio kids have to live in the same city as him and see his face from time to time. Donald now still goes out to town with his grandkids, doing nothing to hide his face anymore. It's likely that he's going to live out the rest of his years as a normal, albeit creepy and mentally screwy, grandpa. Once again, thank you for watching my video. If you found it interesting, please give it a like, it really helps me out in the algorithm, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I must have at least like 5 sperm-related videos at this point. Just recently, I have started up a podcast with 4 of my friends called NBR. If you like this channel, I think you'll probably find it pretty interesting too. If you want, go ahead and follow me on social media, because if anything were to ever happen to this channel again, that would probably be the only way you'd ever hear about it. I also really appreciate when people follow me on Patreon. There you can get videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. Channel memberships are back up too, and you can get all the same benefits there as well. So, this has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.